I've tried to live my life in a way that, and then, during the divorce, they printed fucking horrible lies, horrible, mean.
Like
Ben Affleck did not sit down with GQ to attack Jennifer Lopez in any way. On March 25, 2025, he finally put words to what fans had been sensing for months regarding their relationship, explaining that their breakup was not one explosive scandal but rather a quieter mismatch between two people living under impossible levels of public attention and scrutiny. He said there was no scandal, no soap opera, no intrigue, yet he admitted that the truth behind their separation was much harder to explain than people might have expected from such a high-profile couple. So what was he really saying about Jennifer Lopez through his carefully chosen words and reflections during that conversation? The ship captain admission reveals important details because the narrative about his second divorce usually paints Ben Affleck as a victim of sudden circumstance, but the primary source from the interview shows that he knew exactly what he was getting into from day one of their renewed relationship. When his GQ cover story dropped on March 25, 2025, Affleck finally addressed the public fascination with his relationship with Jennifer Lopez in a thoughtful manner that avoided unnecessary drama. He didn't offer a dramatic confession or point fingers at anyone involved in the situation. Instead, he used a powerful metaphor that explained the structural failure of the marriage in a way that highlighted personal awareness rather than blame. According to the interview which was published by CNN, Affleck stated that you don't marry a ship captain and then say you don't like going out in the water, adding that you have to own what you knew going into any relationship from the very beginning. In plain English, he admitted that her massive celebrity status wasn't something that blindsided him at all during their time together. He chose it knowingly and with full understanding of the implications. The admission shows a deep level of self-awareness that the tabloids completely ignored in their coverage of the events. Affleck was acknowledging the core friction of his marriage where he prefers a quiet and private life while Lopez operates a global entertainment empire that demands constant visibility. He knew the terms of engagement before they ever walked down the aisle in Las Vegas for their initial ceremony. He understood that her world came with paparazzi, constant media scrutiny, and a relentless public spotlight that would follow them everywhere. If you knew your partner's world was a storm of attention and demands, would you still sign up for the voyage into that life? Affleck did decide to move forward with the relationship despite these realities, but the uncomfortable truth he finally admitted is that entering a situation with your eyes wide open doesn't mean you can survive the environment long-term without significant personal challenges. He knew the cost of her fame, but eventually found the water too deep to tread comfortably over an extended period. This brings us to the actual mechanics of how their partnership dissolved over time in a gradual manner. It wasn't a sudden explosion but a slow realization that knowing the cost of something is very different from actually paying it day after day in real life. Affleck's ship captain metaphor proves that the split wasn't fueled by a secret betrayal or a sudden dramatic blowout as many had assumed. It was a calculated realization that two people can love each other deeply while being entirely incompatible in how they navigate the world and its pressures. He tried to adapt to the open water of her lifestyle, but his natural disposition always pulled him back toward dry land and a calmer existence. We often think of celebrity breakups as chaotic storms of vanity and conflict, but this was a quiet capitulation to reality that developed between them. Affleck explicitly stated that there was no soap opera, which means the real drama was entirely internal and personal for both of them. It was the exhaustion of a man trying to sustain an ecosystem that fundamentally drained him emotionally and mentally over time. He didn't blame Lopez for being the captain of her own successful ship in the industry, he blamed himself for thinking he could handle the voyage indefinitely. The entire interview reads less like an exposé and more like a postmortem on expectations that were placed on their union from the start. This realization directly shatters the romantic illusion that pure intention can outlast a constant media siege and public pressure. Love might spark in private moments, but a marriage must survive out in the open under intense observation, and the pressure ultimately proved fatal to their relationship. By stepping back from the situation, he chose sanity over the endless production of being a celebrity couple in the spotlight, but the admission about his temperament is only half the story in understanding their journey. The timeline of the split suggests this revelation didn't happen overnight but built up through various experiences they shared. In fact, the specific date Jennifer Lopez chose to end it in court carries a message that Ben had to admit was the ultimate turning point in their public narrative. The most brutal admission in the Bennifer saga wasn't spoken in an interview, it was written on a court filing dated August 20, which held deep significance. When Jennifer Lopez walked into the Los Angeles County Superior Court to end her marriage to Ben Affleck, the paperwork she submitted carried an undeniable message about the end of their chapter. According to a confirmed report by Variety, Lopez filed for divorce on August 20, 2024, which happened to be the exact 2-year anniversary of their lavish traditional wedding ceremony in Georgia. This wasn't a random Tuesday selected by a legal assistant but carried intentional weight. The choice of dates served as a calculated public admission that the Hollywood fairy tale had officially collapsed into a permanent exit strategy for both of them. To understand how deliberate this timeline was, you have to look at the paperwork itself and the details it contained. The court documents list their official separation date as April 26, 2024, which means the relationship had already been legally dead for nearly 4 months before anyone filed a single document. Lopez sat on that information all summer, letting the media speculate, until the calendar hit the exact date of their anniversary. By doing that, she turned a standard legal filing into a definitive statement about their shared history. Do you think filing for divorce on your wedding anniversary is a coincidence, or a final statement on the relationship? It felt like the final curtain call on a production that had run out of steam after a promising start. The contrast between their beginning and their end makes this choice even more stark in the eyes of observers. According to Clark County records published by NBC News, the couple originally eloped in a fast hopeful Las Vegas ceremony on July 16, 2022. That initial midnight run was spontaneous and intimate, but the Georgia ceremony a month later was the grand public performance that defined their reunion. By targeting the anniversary of that second wedding, Lopez essentially dismantled the public myth of their reunion in a symbolic way. Adding to the tension, the court records revealed there was no prenuptial agreement in place between them. Without a prenup, every single dollar earned during their short marriage from his production company deals to her massive brand partnerships was suddenly subject to division. Leaving the financial stakes unprotected proves that they both genuinely believed the second chance narrative when they started their journey together. They went all in, skipping the safety nets that most Hollywood couples rely on for protection. But when the reality of their incompatibility set in, the exit was handled with absolute precision and care. The anniversary filing didn't just ask a judge for a dissolution, it told the public that the dream of Bennifer 2.0 was completely over. It was a cold calculated sign-off that mirrored the exact scale of their highly publicized romance from the beginning. This legal maneuvering was the ultimate acknowledgement that nostalgia cannot fix the foundational cracks of adulthood and differing lifestyles. The romantic idea that love conquers all dissolved under the weight of daily logistics and conflicting lifestyles they experienced. By choosing that specific date, she reclaimed the narrative, ensuring the anniversary would no longer stand as a symbol of their reunion but rather as the day the illusion ended for good. Ben's ship captain admission explains his side of the story, but he wasn't the first one to break the silence on their experiences. 5 months before he sat down with GQ, Jennifer Lopez gave a raw account of what happens when that ship finally sinks in her own words. When she said her whole world exploded, she wasn't just talking about a breakup but admitting something much darker about the emotional impact. Months before Ben spoke to GQ, Jennifer Lopez had already admitted that the split didn't just hurt but destroyed her sense of reality for a period. When her profile in Interview magazine dropped on October 9, 2024, the public finally saw the collateral damage of the breakup from the person who lived it directly. Speaking directly to comedian Nikki Glazer, Lopez bypassed the usual public relations filters to deliver a remarkably raw confession about her feelings. According to a detailed report by Today, Lopez explicitly stated that her whole world exploded during the summer of her separation, describing the entire experience as probably the hardest time in her life. This wasn't a calculated corporate press release but a visceral admission that the sudden death of her marriage had completely shaken her foundation. This public reckoning provides the necessary context for the ship captain metaphor that Ben would deploy months later in his interview. While Affleck eventually framed the split as a logical realization about incompatible lifestyles, Lopez was the one left navigating the immediate blast radius of the situation. She was forced to confront the harsh reality of the public failure while the media analyzed every single detail of her personal life during that time. In the interview, she explained how the collapse of the relationship forced her into a period of intense solitary reflection on her future. The pop icon admitted she realized she doesn't need someone else to be happy, marking a massive psychological pivot toward independence. She explicitly told Glazer that she was not looking for anybody, signaling a complete shutdown of her romantic life in favor of self-preservation and healing. The contrast between their public admissions highlights the deep emotional disparity in how they processed the divorce at different stages. Lopez admitted the emotional devastation first, forcing Ben to eventually address his role in that explosion when he finally spoke to the press later on. By the time Affleck sat down with his interviewers to explain his discomfort with the open water of her celebrity lifestyle, Lopez had already done the heavy emotional lifting required to rebuild her life. She had already processed the grief, faced the public embarrassment, and come out the other side with a newfound sense of independence and strength. Is it possible to find yourself only after the person you thought was the one admits they can't handle your world? Lopez proved that it absolutely is, turning a public tragedy into a personal reclamation of her identity. This timeline shatters the tabloid myth that the couple was locked in a bitter vindictive war of words throughout the process. Instead, it reveals two adults processing a monumental failure at entirely different speeds and in their own ways. Lopez felt the immediate catastrophic shockwaves of the separation in the summer and fall, while Affleck needed the distance of a new calendar year to articulate his compliance in the breakdown. Her admission was about survival and rediscovering her individual identity after the split, while his admission was about recognizing his personal limits in the relationship. They were two different interpretations of the exact same tragedy that affected their lives. The true tragedy of Bennifer 2.0 is that the very thing that brought them back together, the grand cinematic scale of their romance, is exactly what made the fallout so devastating for her in the end. When you build a relationship in front of the entire world, the collapse happens in front of the entire world too under intense observation. Lopez had to learn the hard way that a second chance doesn't guarantee a different ending if the fundamental architecture of the relationship remains unchanged from before. So she felt the explosion in October, and he admitted he couldn't handle the water in March of the following year. It sounds like a bridge was burned forever between them in some ways. But just weeks after his GQ admission, Ben Affleck appeared in public and said something that completely flipped the betrayal narrative on its head for many observers. Was it a lie, or a new kind of admission about his true feelings? The spectacular admission came just 3 weeks after admitting he couldn't handle being married to a ship captain in the public eye. Ben Affleck stood on a red carpet and admitted she was still spectacular in his view. The public expected a tense standoff or cold silence when the actor finally stepped out for his first major industry event post-interview. Instead, during the promotional run for The Accountant 2 premiere in April 2025, Affleck completely caught the media off guard with his words. According to a red carpet report published by Yahoo Entertainment, Affleck shifted away from the legal logistics and explicitly stated that Jennifer Lopez is spectacular, adding that she is great to his kids and maintains a great ongoing relationship with them. This sudden warmth wasn't a contradiction of his previous statements about their differences. It was the missing piece of the puzzle in understanding their post-marriage dynamic. This red carpet praise highlights the complex reality behind their high-profile separation and how they handled it. Affleck wasn't admitting that he hated his ex-wife, nor was he backtracking on the structural issues that tore them apart. He was admitting that he loves the person but simply cannot handle the larger-than-life persona that surrounds her in the public sphere. The event itself served as a visual testament to this delicate balance that they achieved. As all 5 children from their blended family were present to support the project during that time. By showing up together, the family proved that the divorce hadn't shattered their personal bonds or co-parenting efforts. This red carpet narrative effectively flipped the script on the standard Hollywood postmortem that people expect. By choosing respect over recrimination, he proved that a failed marriage does not require the total destruction of a family ecosystem. It requires maturity, a strict enforcement of boundaries, and a total refusal to provide tabloids with fresh ammunition for stories. Affleck's final admission is that he can admire the spectacle of J-Lo as long as he isn't the one caught in the middle of it on a daily basis. The distinction he made between Lopez the stepmother and Lopez the global superstar changes the entire narrative of their split in important ways. It moves the conversation away from the standard tabloid tropes of betrayal and bitterness, reframing the dynamic into something far more mature and thoughtful for everyone involved. Can you truly call an ex spectacular after admitting you couldn't survive a life with them in the long run? Affleck proved that you can, provided you have the self-awareness to separate the individual from the environment they inhabit. He recognized her impact on his children's lives as something entirely distinct from the marital friction that drove them to Los Angeles County Superior Court. The premiere quote was a deliberate effort to protect that family unit from the ongoing media circus surrounding them. This public display of grace effectively redefines what a successful Hollywood ending looks like in modern times. The marriage failed, but the transition into a functional protective co-parenting dynamic succeeded despite the challenges. It showed an actor who had finally found his footing after months of intense public scrutiny, standing firm in his respect for his former partner while maintaining his own boundaries. He didn't need to diminish her to justify walking away from the relationship they had built. By praising her publicly while holding his ground on the separation, Affleck managed to disarm the clickbait machine entirely. He took the teeth out of the rumors by refusing to play the villain or cast her as one in the story. It was a masterclass in modern celebrity damage control, turning what could have been a hostile press junket into a celebration of family resilience and maturity. He drew a sharp line between the public marriage and the private family, ensuring the kids remained protected from unnecessary drama. This public praise seemed like a happy ending to many observers at the time. But a final leak to the press revealed why Ben was so quick to be nice in his comments. It turns out that the GQ interview wasn't just a talk but was a strategic exit from the public conversation. Why is Ben Affleck now officially done talking about J-Lo according to sources?